Welcome, everybody. My name is Ryan Schaller. I'm with Okta as a developer specialist, and I'm pleased to be joined by three individuals: Kelly Johnson, CIO of Kansas Department of Labor; Tommy Trang, Managing Director of Accenture; and Zach Watkins, Director of Fraud and Identity Solutions from LexisNexis Risk Solutions. Welcome, everybody.
Thank you.
Welcome. Hello, Ryan.
Hey. And today we're going to be talking about fraud mitigation in state and local government. And the first thing that I really want to start talking about between us all is what kind of problems that we're experiencing. So looking at Zach and Tommy for this one, what are you seeing in the customers that you're talking through? What kind of fraud issues that you're seeing?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think with the pandemic, it was sort of the great equalizer and accelerator of a lot of digital transformation initiatives, especially state and local agencies and certainly in the private sector as well. And so we saw just a complete unprecedented amount of inundation of requests, hardware that couldn't necessarily support the level of traffic, and trying to translate in-person interactions to a digital interaction was a challenge, especially in trying to balance that fraud versus friction type of scale. And so I think we had seen a number of different approaches. Many of them were not that successful, right? In trying to open the doors and lower friction and allow people to get benefits. And we're certainly even still seeing some of the fallout from there. But I think we've had a great success story in working as a collaborative group across Accenture, Kansas, Okta, and LexisNexis to approach this in a unified front and start combating a lot of these instances with a multi-layered approach and a solution stack. So really looking forward to the discussion here today to kind of bring a little bit more light to some of that going forward.
Yeah, and great insight too. And from your perspective, Tommy, I mean, we're talking with these customers jointly, and it's, there's a lot of challenges that come up. What are you seeing?
Yeah, I'm seeing pretty much what Zach is saying, but in addition to that, taking a look from a different perspective, the fraudsters these days, we're seeing they take action that we have never seen before. They actually will be willing to call into a call center with a human and actually try to do social engineering and gain past these security things and steal people's identity. So pretty bold move, right? That they want to talk to a human as well, in addition to the bots and the traditional attack that you normally see. So
right.
Keep it on our toes.
Yeah, people are getting creative these days, right? Just trying to get money that shouldn't even be theirs in the first place. But that's what we're seeing on the implementation side. But Kelly, from your perspective, what was your experience in fraud so far, right? What kind of pressures were you seeing? What was the overall sentiment of the state? And give us some insight there.
Well, obviously, I mean, it was on multi-fronts. I mean, the pandemic created a huge surge in legitimate claims, but again, it also created a huge opportunity for fraudsters to jump in and start literally scamming the system.
Yeah.
And so a lot of our challenge was deciding who's who is valid, who is not valid, and making sure that we were able to rapidly pay Kansans the money that they were due, and at the same time try to determine, the level of fraud that was occurring. And the level of fraud was growing exponentially. I mean, we started seeing numbers in, starting in November, but December and January were outrageous. And so as with a limited staff, as you focus your direction on fraud, unfortunately, that limits your ability to pay valid claims. So we were hitting a critical mass that we had to make some type of decision.
Yeah, and that's what's the tough part, is because these people who actually need the help are in a waiting state. I mean, you expected some traffic initially, but not to the volume that you were experiencing. And those are usually the key indicators that signal Tommy and Zach and I to basically start having those open-ended conversations around what kind of attacks that you're experiencing. But from the staff perspective, it sounded like with a smaller shop, like you were allocated to help solve this fraud problems, but if there's too much of an inflow, what kind of burden was it putting on the team?
Well, and that's exactly right. I mean, we have a staff that's highly dedicated and working double overtime. I mean, they were looking at this from every angle, and unfortunately, there were more bad guys than there were us. And so the staff was quickly becoming overwhelmed. We were starting to see systems, not just people, but actual computer systems fail when you start looking at a large number of fraudulent claims coming in. So I don't want to say morale was declining, because it wasn't. There were just people that were very tired and giving every effort they have with no end in sight.
Yeah, I mean, I remember having early conversations with you and understanding some of those things. It's just tough. And Zach, you had touched on that a little bit earlier around systems getting pegged. Like what, from your perspective, was this different than what we've seen in the past, or is it pretty much a pattern?
I mean, I think it was certainly unprecedented, the amount of, the scale of all of this. And I think to some extent, no one could have anticipated the amount of volume that would be hitting a lot of systems and states in general. We do have a lot of learnings in terms of the private sector of being able to transition services online, and how there is a need to protect those systems from an influx of attacks from an abuse perspective. You think bots, right? DDoS attacks. And so it's not like we're reinventing the wheel now. We have the benefit of looking towards private sector solutions and applying them in this case. But many agencies were still in a transition period of trying to lay out that digital transformation initiative, right? And so I think that was the unprecedented part, is I don't think anyone really was able to be prepared for that level of influx. But thankfully that we were able to work together in a collaborative way to have that kind of a stack that could scale to meet that type of a need.
Yeah, speaking of working together, Tommy, from your perspective, like we were getting calls late at night and we had to kind of mimic what the experience that Kelly's staff was having. So how did the partnership between Okta, LexisNexis help with some of these immediate problem solving needs?
Yeah, I think it definitely helped a lot that Accenture, LexisNexis, and Okta has a relationship already and actually working together to solve these problems in other places, in other states. So we tap that relationship, right? We know who to call, and each of the partner just bring their best on it and committed right on the spot to do whatever it takes, right? As Kelly mentioned, the staff were very dedicated. They work night and day, double time. You see around the clock just putting this together in a really fast manner. I was pretty impressed with how the team come together so quickly, right? From the ideation of the solution all the way to when we actually went live was under a month.
Yeah, I mean, and Kelly, like from your perspective, you had laid out specific requirements. Was it just to address, your pandemic applications, or was it more holistically? Like, what's your vision here?
Well, the platform was designed. I mean, initially we had to stop this fraud bleed. I mean, we had to get that. But we were trying to look at this as a holistic solution and something that is modern that we can build upon for the future. I mean, there's no doubt that every system needs to have a modern, complete identity management platform. And so our goal in this was, of course, to roll this out quickly with the help of all of our partners, but also to have something that we can build on going into the future. Speaking as an overall entity of the state of Kansas, we have actually built this platform where other agencies within the state could now engage in this exact same platform now that the groundwork has been laid. So it wasn't just an initial issue, but also something that will help us grow into the future.
Right. It's like having those playbooks for, okay, I might be handling all the unemployment issues, but if we want to go into agricultural services or, any state-based services, it's nice to be able to have an operating manual of saying, here's how we proceed for the future, right? It's not reinventing the wheel 10 times. It's doing something, that's repeatable. And then also, interesting enough, I'm curious about your perspective of this, Zach, because we're talking about identity, as a service, or just a centralized identity. Zach, how did the two solutions play together, right? The Okta and LexisNexis, how did those help really shape, some of the choking points that we were able to do?
Yeah, and I think this is a great point on to what Kelly was mentioning on standardizing on a solution that can scale. And I think the relationship that Okta and Lexis has is great in that we've established that connectivity between our two platforms. And we can essentially deliver our identity proofing services through like Okta Rails, right? And the benefit of Accenture obviously consulting on this and pulling us all in together, of having the benefit of having that relationship is we were able to act quickly, because really what the brunt of the work was from our perspective was standing up the rails, the connection to our service. Once we stood up that connection, we could then instill like a multi-layered approach to proof and identity, right? We can assess the digital identity of the individual, the actual verification of the PII provided, and then work to authenticate them and with like KBA or some other MFA method. And so I think that's the value of the relationships that we bring together, is that we could essentially, I think you mentioned a month turnaround. In our perspective, I think we were even, it was like 18 days or something from being engaged to standing it up. So that's right. Almost unheard of. But we're doing this and have done this many times together. It's not our first interaction together, and I think that's the benefit of the interoperability and connectivity between our two platforms here.
Right. I mean, and Tommy is kind of your team was the glue, right? You guys were boots on the ground right away and saying, okay, well, sometimes I swear you work for Okta or LexisNexis, but that expertise really did lend a hand, right, to get things moving quickly, right?
Absolutely. I mean, we took something that was proven, right? We worked with the various different state agencies at the data center to stand up a new server quickly. Like as Kelly mentioned, the vision was for the entire state of Kansas. We engaged with the CTO at OITS, talked to them. So it was a collaborative solution that looked for the future. And KDOL is the first tenet of this solution, but it is set up with a longer vision that anticipate other tenants to be jumping on and sharing this.
Right, and that's great. And Kelly, now from your perspective, after this solution gets rolled out, then talk about the aftermath. Like, what was the experience post deployment?
Well, once, because we technically, the formal implementation after all the development work had been done in the background, again, in an unprecedented amount of time. Okay, I mean, this was rolled out so quickly, but we rolled it out at 0700 on a Tuesday morning. Immediately, our systems began to react different. And I'm not talking human systems, I'm talking computer systems. And I've told this story on numerous occasions, but the computers themselves actually started reporting alerts because their CPU usage had dropped to normal for the first time in months. So what they had baselined as normal was pegged out 100% CPU. And when they dropped to a 30, 35% usage, these systems immediately began to think something was wrong. They thought they were broke because they were normal. So that's not an understatement. That's the immediate impact that we saw. And of course, now, no one would believe me if I said it went perfect on the first day, because it didn't. we had issues we had to clean up. We had communications with, of course, our claimants. However, considering the scope of this project, it's as clean as could be expected. So once the systems began to act normally, there's a waterfall effect from this, which means all of a sudden our customer service reps' computers are more responsive. They can handle more claimants because they're not waiting on computers. The IT staff is no longer looking over their shoulder to see what that fire is behind them. They're able to start focusing on the future. And again, as previously mentioned, we then took that extra time and focused that solely on getting claimants paid. And so very much, it was an overnight transformation for this agency.
That's awesome. It must have been a breath of fresh air for everybody working those late nights, I'm assuming.
Yeah, I think everyone was in a coma still for a couple weeks, but we came out of it.
Yeah. That's awesome. And from your perspective too, having a centralized identity or working towards that for, future holistic goals, from the benefit side, is the state giving you, good feelings on that, or what's your perspective on, having centralized identity?
Oh yeah, I mean, absolutely. Again, the Department of Labor is the first adopter of this service. And so, but the state was there with us every step of the way. I mean, we had full access to our centralized state system is known as Office of Information Technology Service, or OITS. We worked with them even through the procurement process and were able to get systems turned up, firewalls working immediately. So it's just as is a joint effort between all of our companies, intrastate, it was a joint effort between our agencies.
Awesome. And, if I'm sitting here listening to this, I'm going, well, I might be experiencing fraud, or I don't want to be in that situation where my CPUs are on fire. How do I engage with you, Tommy? How do I start my journey? What's the best way to begin, either proactively or reactively?
Yes, I mean, obviously people can always reach out to us, and others they have been, right? They've been talking to Kelly. I have a meeting with the state of Ohio, similarly the office of the CIO, just to share our experience and see what we can help and give them guidance. So really, we're here to help to try to combat fraud and really to protect the resources that the state have, and make sure that the citizens get the entitled benefit as quickly as possible, right? Our goal is just to make sure people's life is being impacted in a positive manner.
Yeah. And, from your perspective, Zach, how plug and play is this, to be able to deployment, right? The benefit of Okta and LexisNexis working together, each application that every state has that they might be targeting, how to mitigate the fraud that might be affecting it. From your view, how does that work, right? How's that beneficial? How do they start?
Yeah, no, and that's a great question, because you or I are typically involved in the earlier discussions, because there is no one size fits all solution, right? We have to, design an approach that factors in fraud mitigation, but also user experience, because if someone gets frustrated in the process, they're going to inundate an already inundated call center. And so I think the approach that we've employed, and we haven't really talked about what's under the hood, but it really is stringing together a number of different solutions that check as much passively first before introducing friction to customers. So we rely on consortium type of models. There's threat insights with Okta. There's threat metrics at LexisNexis to tie in digital identity context, right? Where are these actors on the globe at this point in time? Are they associated with this PII, right? Is it Zach using Zach's information, or is it Ryan using Zach's stolen information, right? It may be legitimate information.
Or is it Ryan from another country, right?
Right, exactly,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
So we've all heard that phrase, it takes a network to find a network, and that's where we get into prevention versus detection. And so the approach that we're taking and passive checks before introducing, that MFA or something is is critical too. We've seen, there are other approaches out there that kind of invert it, right? May ask for like you to scan a document, but then that ties in things like equitable access. People may not be able to have the hardware to scan a document or the document itself, right? So if we could do as much as we can passively to validate and vet these folks, we can pay them out and take that off that burden off the plate of the folks who have to manually investigate that. So really, that's to get to the core of your question. It's working with us to design that, right? We need to make sure we're matching the authentication method to the level of risk, and that may vary agency by agency, but the connectivity is there. And then once we have that connectivity established, we can then build those custom workflows and multi-layered approaches.
Got it. Yeah, I mean, and that's just the best way to proceed, right? Come to us with your unique snowflake and let's kind of figure out how that works. Now, Kelly, if there are other states who are listening here, what advice that you might give to them if they're either being kind of, again, proactive or reactive, and maybe a mindset that you might instill that says, hey, don't be shy to investigate things? Like, what's your perspective?
Ryan, that's really a great question, because I think you probably also answered it better than I can. So, I mean, don't be shy, because one of the concerns that I know we had here was we had years of legacy applications built, which you start looking at, okay, let's do a new authentication system for all of these platforms. It's overwhelming. However, the solution that we ended up presenting here ended up just simply being a front door and a module that was able to work correctly with the existing platforms. I won't go into the details, but I'm going to say we just presented a front door, which was a clean handoff to existing systems, thus offloading the identity management from our platforms, reducing CPU, reducing overall hardware cost, but yet with minimal impact on the back end. So for states that are looking at a solution, I think it's a great idea to, think outside the box.
To be able to potentially move to something that might help them beneficially and modernize it. Totally get it. So thank you for that, Kelly. And we have about 1 minute left, and I just wanted to take the time to thank Tommy, Kelly, and Zach for coming and having this discussion today. Any last words of wisdom, gentlemen?
I appreciate the partnership that all the companies had. It allowed our agency once again to regain some time so we can focus on our core values of getting the people that need and deserve this money into their pockets, into their accounts. And we just, we've found great partners here. And we would invite visiting with any state entity that has specific questions.
Tommy?
Yeah, echoing Kelly, I mean, it takes a team, and it has been an absolute pleasure working together, and we absolutely can take this, to help other states as well. So really looking forward to those discussions.
And Ryan, thanks for having us. And like Kelly and Zach echo, I mean, don't be shy. We've proven that we can combat fraud and get the benefit to the rightful people, and it can be done very quickly. So if they need help, we're happy to volunteer to lend our experience.
Thank you. This was perfect. And again, thank you again for coming today and having this discussion. Enjoy the next and rest of this time for all those viewers, the rest of your sessions, and be safe and be healthy.